Ladies, gentlemen, humans, welcome to the Global Solutions Summit 2024. I am Claudia Brüninghaus. I'll be your conference moderator and accompany you through these 2 days to come. We're very honored and excited to see you there. So many of you traveled long distances. So many of you online took the time to be here today. Altogether, you're coming from more than 120 countries. That's an applause. It actually means the world to us that so many take the time. There's so much to talk about. There's so much that we have to get moving about. And maybe you don't have an idea yet of how full of excellent thinkers this room and this stream is, but we sure do. And we're very excited to be in the same space when you find out. Now, what do we need all this brain power for? I suggest we just look at the media. There's crisis after crisis, there's pessimism, there's resignation sometimes even. But this summit, again, is about more than the daily headlines. It's about the enduring issues. At GSI, we believe that there are answers out there, that there's basis for hope in research, in hands-on experiences, in pragmatism, and things that we learn from people all over the globe. We really think that if also in the next few days we focus on solutions, that we can turn a lot of things around. If we look at the broader context, we're now in a super election year, with votes that could have dramatic consequences for our planet, for our societies. So it's really time to roll our sleeves up. And there's a lot of problems to describe, but we don't want to get stuck there. So we put this summit under the theme, Moving Beyond Crisis, and that's what we invite you to. So for those who are here at the SMT with us, talk to strangers, discuss, let's stick our heads together. Actually, the same is true for you on the web stream also. Talk to strangers, discuss, and stick your heads together. Please, also, you all together, you can meet on the stream, you can use the same chats, you can use the same hashtag. Please do that. If you share your thoughts online, that's for all of us GSS 2024, so we can follow your stream of thoughts. And now, before we go into the program, I want to introduce your hosting teams to you. As head of events at Global Solutions Initiative, I know what has to happen before you open doors to a summit like this. I can put it in a nutshell, it's a lot. And so there's also a lot of people behind the scenes, and maybe those of my GSI team who are now in the room can quickly wave, stand up and wave, and those who are in the chat can maybe just write a quick hello. No, you really have to stand up and wave. Where are you? GSI. Hello. There you are, there's more. And so there's many more of us around. We wear these green lanyards, and that means that's a hosting team where each of us has a share in what's happening here in these 2 days. Please walk up to us if you have any questions, but also walk up to my colleagues if you have any compliments to make. They all deserve them so much. Most recently, this team moved to a new office at Alexanderplatz. And sadly, pretty much like the office before, it's not equipped at all to host 1,000 people. So we are very happy that we were again able to partner up with ESMT, with this team at the European School for Management and Technology, and that we are allowed to be back here in this building. That means that we don't only have the building to be guests in, but that there's also a very, very professional team behind the scenes that helps us set this up. And that also means that in here we can profit from a spirit of curiosity and of research and of globality that I hope you can perceive also. So with this, I want to introduce to you, and imagine a very large team behind you, the president of the European School for Management and Technology, Mr. Jörg Ruchol.
Yeah, dear Claudia, thank you so much for the warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to welcome you also on behalf of ESMT to the Global Solutions Summit 2024. It is, you could say, a tradition. It's a great tradition that we've been able to work with Global Solutions on this summit. we actually looking into the data. We started in 2017. It is a great pleasure to just name a few: Professor Dennis Snower, Christian Kastrop, Markus Engels, the whole team, the team you could just see here, to have this collaboration and to talk about the really imminent and important topics of today. Be it, and just to mention a few, climate action, sustainable energy, global health security, the need for multilateral cooperation, and as Claudia just said, also the need just to talk about these topics from very different perspectives, bring together these different perspectives, and to think about solutions for these topics that go beyond the day in which this discussion that we have today is just the start or even an enforcer of the discussion we should have anyways, and that should go beyond the day. As I said, we are very delighted about this cooperation, and we are in particular delighted to also cooperate even more closely when it comes to the cooperation between the Berlin Global Dialogue hosted by ESMT and the Global Solutions Summit by having intertwined sessions in these formats. What I like in particular is the fact that we have here eminent thinkers, policymakers from around the world. We have so many different nationalities, so many different perspectives, so many different backgrounds represented here that I really truly believe that we can make a difference by bringing these different perspectives, these different viewpoints together. And that is also something why we at ESMT strongly believe in exactly this. We are represented by the notion that we have now about 90 different nationalities on our campus when we just come to our students. We have faculty members from all over the world. We have staff members from all over the world. And what I find particularly important for our discussion today, that also students from ESMT are here today. So these students, among others, will also provide, you could say, the young voice that is needed to tackle all the questions we are here for today, so that this is not just about the current leaders making decisions, preparing decisions, but also having the future leaders involved, those who really will shape and make the changes that are necessary to instill these changes. Maybe those of you who have been here a couple of times, you know this already, but nonetheless it's worth mentioning. We are here in a very special building. It is a business school today, as I said, a very international business school, a business school that strives for responsible entrepreneurship. At the same time, it used to be a building with a completely different history. It used to be the headquarters of socialism on German soil. So this is where the Supreme Governing Council of the GDR resided until 1989, 1990. And in that sense, I would say it's one of the nicest ironies of German history that what used to be the headquarters of socialism on German soil is now home to a privately run business school and actually the place in which we can form or create the platform for the exchange between policymakers, representatives from academia, from business, and from other parts of society. So in that sense, we should use this. Some of the remnants you can still see on our walls. They are not representative of what we stand for today, but rather they represent what the ideal view was that the GDR Supreme Governing Council had. With this, I hope, as we fortunately could experience throughout our cooperation, with this I hope that we will receive great new insights, but these insights not just stay here for the day, but rather create, you could say, the platform for action for whatever is coming over the next year when we will meet here again, and to measure our progress not only by the insights we've created here today, but rather to what extent these insights can force and can help us in shaping decisions that are coming over the course of this year. In that sense, what really we are after are long-term, viable, and now I'm coming back to the theme, global solutions, and solutions that not only tackle national or specific interests, but rather take a truly global perspective. With this, looking very much forward to the discussions here. Again, a very warm welcome to all of you for being here, with the invitation to engage yourself into the discussion, to bring in your viewpoints, and really to make us and get us out here after the end of tomorrow with a much more informed, better, and action-oriented view. Thank you so much, and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jörg Ruchol, and also to your entire team, which will, by the way, be offering very compact guided tours through this building today and tomorrow around lunchtime. You can sign up for those on the app, or you can also check for available spots once they meet on the Wandelgang. I'll tell you again, but take advantage of these tours. They're really, really nice. So we wanted to start this conference off with some food for thought. And to do so, we couldn't think of a better fit than you, actually. Johan Rockström, you are the director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. I have to not forget that part. And before I introduce you to that stage, Professor Rockström, let me say that much. With your work on planetary boundaries, you became, I think, one of the most cited researchers in the world, actually, because at the latest, when you and your team expanded the concept to the safe and just Earth system boundaries, you gave facts and numbers and also vocabulary, actually, to all of us who work to make the world a better place and to safeguard the global commons. And so we are really looking forward to have you send us on our way to this conference, and I'll leave that stage to you. Please welcome with a warm applause Professor Johan Rockström.
Thank you so much. Dear fellow citizens on planet Earth, science is absolutely clear. We are today forced to conclude the following. We are at risk of destabilizing the entire planet. We are at risk to irreversibly undermine the life support systems that form the basis for everything we cherish, everything we value, the economy, social societies, human well-being, equity, and justice. Can you imagine? We can today say without any hesitation across consensus in the scientific community that planetary stability is today so threatened, it is no chance for us to achieve equity and justice without also securing the stability of the planet. But the reverse also applies. Sustainability can only be achieved through equity and justice. These are two fundamentally intertwined, fundamental prerequisites for our future on planet Earth. We cannot separate equity and justice in a world of 8, soon to be 9+ billion co-citizens in the world as we know it, without also fundamentally investing in securing the stability of the planet. And now we're heading towards overshoot. We are at 1.48 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise, the warmest temperature on Earth since we left the last ice age, actually 3 times higher than the warmest temperature. We're seeing the invoices coming back, hitting the economy, over $300 billion per year, just in extreme events of heat, droughts, floods, disease patterns, hitting people and the most vulnerable in the world. But we're heading towards overshoot, very likely permanently going past 1.5, that I do not call a target or a goal. It's a scientific limit. The reason for this is that science has shown very clearly that if we pass 1.5, we're likely to trigger multiple irreversible tipping points. Let me just give you a few of those. The Greenland ice sheet, the West Antarctic ice sheet, abrupt thawing of permafrost in the boreal region in the world, losing all tropical coral reef systems in the world, livelihoods for over 300 million people. Just the 2 ice sheets are over 10 meters sea level rise. So 1.5 is, I would argue, an unacceptable limit beyond which we undermine our future. We will go to overshoot, and the best science can give us today is an overshoot period of 30 to 40 years, 0.1 to 0.3 degrees Celsius of warming, and then to come back to 1.5 by the end of this century. Why would we come back? Well, it's only if we're able to decarbonize the global economy and return within planetary boundaries for nature, on biodiversity, on fresh water, on nutrients, and on land. That's our charge. It's a global sustainability solution pathway which is no longer linear, it's exponential, and it's all about equity and justice for humanity. Now, I just want to, as a little dark input, which I think we all need to be recognizing, what does 30, 40 years of 0.1 to 0.3 degrees Celsius overshoot really mean? Well, we've just experienced 2023, which is the most enduring extreme year we've ever recorded. We just touched 1.5 during 1 year, during a El Niño year that was amplified by us humans, and we will be, unfortunately, looking back at 2023 as an harmonious year compared to what an overshoot is. So dear friends, I can tell you science message is, number one, buckle up. Because it may get better if we get things right from something like the Global Solutions Summit agenda, but it will be a tough gauntlet in the transition. It's all about investing in Earth resilience. It's all about recognizing that there are scientifically based boundaries that translate into budgets. These budgets are finite: a global carbon budget, a global nitrogen budget, a water budget, a phosphorus budget, a land budget, a biodiversity budget, an air budget. These budgets need to be distributed in a fair and just way among all nations, businesses, communities, citizens around the world. That, dear friends, is our great challenge. This is not about the environment. It's about prosperity and equity for humanity, for the world we know on planet Earth. And we know that this is well beyond the environment. We have so much research now going on showing that global systemic risks are at risk of interacting and amplifying each other. We talk of a climate crisis in isolation from an ecological crisis, but at the same time we have geopolitical instability and extreme right-wing nationalism and food insecurity, energy insecurity, water insecurity, and all the research on migration, displacement, and conflict. Just to put all that together in one cocktail, I can tell you that science shows clearly that these are amplifiers. These are at risk of pushing ourselves towards a point where we cause social instabilities that are very difficult to reverse. We need to truly work together across disciplines to change this. It's all about, what I argue, planetary stewardship. We must now recognize that we are no longer this small world on this infinitely large, stable planet. Oh no, we are this big world on a very small, fragile planet. We've filled up the entire environmental space. It's time to be stewards of the whole system. It's about global governance. It's about collective action. It's about trust. It's about recognizing the need for us now to connect across all cultures and work together. Well, of course, you're thinking this is a naive academic standing there. Because given the geopolitical instability and the level of trust we have today in the world, this is, of course, not very likely to happen. But that is why I think gatherings like this are so important, because we also have empirical evidence that coalitions of the willing, alliances for change, the efforts of establishing a climate club, keystone actors, can create large enough minorities of positive change to tip over the inertia and even the resistance in the large majorities. So how does a safe landing look like? A journey towards landing back within the safe operating space on Earth? Well, my message to you is very simple. It's all about speed and scale. There's no future anymore of incremental linear change. We need to bend the global curve of emissions, of biodiversity loss on all planetary boundaries, and we need to reach these net zero zones within 20 to 30 years. It's about innovation, it's about safety, it's about justice. And let me just line up a few solution areas at that global level. Number one, on the global policy regime. I would argue that there is no safe landing only by nurturing, let's say, bottom-up, great initiatives, which we see across the world, and I'm sure that many of you represent them and that you are here and will share them. But we need it also to be guided by policy measures, regulatory frameworks from above through democratic, transparent decision-making. Is this possible? Well, I would argue the answer is yes. I mean, we tend to often, I think wrongly, accuse the climate policy regime of endlessly having these COP meetings and never coming to a conclusion. Well, if you look carefully at what we've agreed upon, we have a roadmap that is not scientifically aligned in perfection, but it's good enough. All countries have signed up to the legally binding Paris Agreement to hold 1.5, accelerate the transition this decade, align with science, phase out methane, do everything we can on biodiversity, and truly move towards decarbonizing. It's time to implement what we have agreed upon. Number two is economics. Of course, we will have a lot of discussions during this summit on the economic paradigm, on the urgent need to internalize externalities. We know that this is required beyond carbon. We know that over 40 countries in the world have a price on carbon. We know that what the European Union is now implementing with the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, is a way of putting a charge on stopping the incentives for damaging the planet and instead creating the incentives for sustainable renewable energy transitions. Equity. We also need to recognize the need for wealth redistribution. We have this skewed Gini coefficient across the world, which is just accentuating. Now is the time to release public sector funding to de-risk investments in green technology in the global south to speed up the transition also in the most vulnerable countries. And finally, we need to measure the planet. We need to now get the Earth observation community in the world and the Earth science community in the world, and we have a great responsibility as scientists, so we can give you a dashboard of how are we doing with planet Earth. And the good news is we can do this. We're actually setting out to do it. In the Planetary Boundary Health Check will be released the first time at the UN Climate Summit in September. So in conclusion, to leave you with, time is running out, but there is light in the tunnel. It's urgent. Speed and scale is the only metric that counts. We need multilateral policy making and trust among actors to act and to dare, courage to lead. And finally, I don't think we should be too nervous about the turbulence we're seeing in the world today. When you look at empirical big transitions in the world of history, there's always a noise in phases of transition. There's no question today whether we will actually decarbonize the world economy, or whether we will have to move from linear to circular business models, or whether we will halt the loss of biodiversity. I would argue that's not the question. The only question is, will we be too late? Will we be able to accomplish this transition fast enough? So let's get on with it, and I think this kind of gathering is fundamental. Science is backing it fully. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Rockström, for your words and the vocabulary again, for also this meeting and for the backing also. I think we can use it. So, with your thoughts on sustainability through equity and justice on our minds, it's my pleasure to hand over to my colleague, who, as president of the Global Solutions Initiative, together with your companions, founded the Global Solutions Initiative in the first place 8 years ago. You continue to inspire our work behind the scenes every day, and so it is my pleasure to introduce to you the president of the Global Solutions Initiative. You know what it is, Mr. Dennis Noah. There you go.
Professor Rocholl, Johan, that was brilliant. Excellencies, friends. We've heard it. The Earth is out of balance. Our Earth systems are destabilizing. The way we live has serious consequences. We pollute, we deplete natural resources, we impair biodiversity, we undermine the stability, the resilience of our ecosystems. Climate change moves much faster than our global efforts to stop it. Sorry, I have a weak voice, but I've got a strong message. Unfortunately, we're also diminishing our human capacities to deal with the problems that we create. Inequality, job insecurity, stagnating living standards have given rise to a sense of disempowerment and disenchantment. Our societies are fragmenting. Political polarization is on the rise. Why is this happening? Not because human beings are inherently ignorant or evil, but they find themselves trapped in a system that induces them to behave in ways that turn out to be destructive. The system focuses on economic success. The underlying assumption is that what's good for the economy is automatically good for society and the environment. But that assumption is wrong. Businesses are expected, in fact required, to prioritize financial performance. Politicians are expected to act in the national interest. Consumers satisfy their wants at minimum cost. And the system allows these pursuits to proceed even when they damage other people and nature. And meanwhile, the economy continues to grow and grow. Economic prosperity has become increasingly decoupled from social and environmental prosperity. And unless we recouple economic prosperity with social and environmental prosperity, we will undermine the very basis of our lives, and we will become progressively unable to do anything about it. The recoupling transformation calls for a new worldview, a new way of understanding how the world works and what our role is in it. And the last time a radically new worldview emerged was with the appearance of the so-called Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries. The Enlightenment view highlighted human autonomy, humanism, reason, dispassionate objectivity, social contract, and a belief in human progress. Democracies were meant to serve the purposes of autonomous citizens. Capitalist economies were meant to serve the preferences of autonomous consumers. And the earth increasingly came to be viewed as a resource to be exploited in order to satisfy human wants. And driven in part by this worldview, the past 225 years have been a time of unprecedented economic growth, rising life expectancies, spreading democratic governance, rising living standards. Now, the values of the Enlightenment continue to be important for human well-being, but we can see the footprint of the environment in the brokenness of the Enlightenment, in the brokenness of our current world. The emphasis on individual autonomy blinds us to the need for understanding the societal forces that drive political fragmentation and social manipulation. Viewing the world dispassionately impoverishes our capacity for solidarity and belonging. And the drive to master nature blinds us to the need to participate responsibly and humbly in ecosystems that we do not properly understand. So what new worldview can guide us towards recoupling? We live in an order that is larger than our individual selves. Our order spans our immediate neighborhoods, our web of social connections, our place in the political landscape of power relations, our network of economic relations. And our order exists in turn in larger orders, in an interconnected web of life. And when we live in harmony with our order, we find peace and fulfillment. Peace comes from promoting sustainability. Fulfillment comes from living life meaningfully, and meaning is not to be found in the exclusive pursuit of your own happiness. Meaning is to be found in making your individual purposes align with your collective purposes. To flourish, we need to recognize our need for solidarity. Our true wealth is commonwealth, and we can measure it simply in terms of how well we care, not just for ourselves and our loved ones, but for the poor and the underprivileged amongst us, and for our ravaged earth. True care is agency-based, helping others help themselves and help yet others in this web of interdependence. To flourish, we need to exercise responsible agency. And responsible agency can be exercised when we mobilize our greatest strengths to achieve our highest purposes, promoting harmonious orders for people and planet. And aside from solidarity and agency, we require material sufficiency, enough material gain to satisfy our basic material needs. And we require environmental sustainability. Now, though markets can promote efficiency under the right conditions, there is no invisible hand that will deliver solidarity, agency, material sufficiency for all, and environmental sustainability. It doesn't exist. So, we have 4 drivers of human flourishing: solidarity, our sense of embeddedness in our social, political, economic, natural orders; agency, our capacity to address our challenges by shaping our surroundings and innovating; material gain, the goods and services that we require for health, security, and comfort; and a self-sustaining environment, a natural world where all sentient creatures can flourish now and in the future. These 4 drivers of flourishing: solidarity, agency, material gain, and environmental sustainability, summarized by the acronym SAGE, provide a foundation for a sage approach to life. Now, putting this into practice, we find 4 principles of collective action, which you can apply illustratively to climate change. First principle is shared purpose, arising from solidarity at a scale that corresponds to the scale of the problem. Since climate change is global, our solidarity has to be with humanity and all sentient creatures. Shared purpose means shared climate goals across countries. Second principle is agency-based governance, whereby the purposeful decisions of different stakeholders are brought into some consistency with one another to address common collective challenges. Agency-based climate policies involve international negotiations among countries following distinctive but binding pathways towards common climate goals, giving all countries both the means and the say to achieve a collective ambition. The third principle is redirection of material gain. Business incentives and operating conditions need to be reformed with the aim of ensuring that profit cannot be earned at the expense of the environment or at the expense of social cohesion. That could involve a tax on dirty antisocial operations or subsidies for pro-social and clean operations, along with regulations and laws that set bounds on what's permitted. And consumer incentives can be redirected along similar lines so that people have the opportunity to do naturally what is good for their surroundings, the natural world and each other. And finally, the fourth principle concerns the requisite pervasiveness of environmental responsibility. All our economic activities in interaction with one another must be sustainable. They should all be rewarding when we contribute to the bounty of the earth, and we should be penalized for diminishing its bounty. And these four principles, shared purpose, agency-based governance, redirected gain, and environmental responsibility, again summarized by the acronym SAGE, could usher us into a new enlightenment, one that prioritizes human flourishing in a thriving natural world. Now, what this means in practice, in terms of environmental policy, macroeconomic policy, innovation policy, competition policy, sustainable development, civil society initiatives, business practices. That is all important work in progress. And may this Global Solutions Summit advance our quest for collective solutions to grave collective problems in our increasingly fragile world. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you, Dennis Snower, and thanks to all of you. So now let's inaugurate this round table over there. We do like a round table at the Global Solutions Initiative, and you're going to see a lot of them in here, obviously, but also all over the venue, to gather around and to look each other into the eye and discuss on eye level. For this opening panel, we gather a group of personalities whom we trust to really set the tone and the vocabulary for these 2 days to come and to help us establish the solution focus all of us were talking about earlier. Your host in this session is a long companion and supporter of the Global Solutions Initiative and also one of the team's absolute favorite hosts. Declan Curry is a Northern Irish journalist, a businessman and a news presenter, and you actually, Declan, more than deserve one of what we call a voice of God, so I'm not going to take that off you, but clear the stage for the opening panel.
Please welcome to the stage your moderator, Declan Curry.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for being with us for this opening panel, whether you're here in the room in Berlin or you're watching us from all corners of the world. I'm Declan Curry. I'm a journalist and broadcaster. I'm going to invite my panelists to join us at the table. They are Colm Kelly, Gabriela Ramos, Dennis Snower, and Isabella Teixeira. Please give them all a round of applause.
Hello.
And as we settle in, let me tell you a little bit about each of them. Colm Kelly is Global Leader for Corporate Sustainability at the Business Advisors PwC. He is a wise and trusted counsellor to some of the world's most influential business leaders. He's also a guiding mind and a great friend to the Global Solutions Summit, as is Gabriela Ramos, who is Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences at UNESCO, the United Nations Scientific, Educational and Cultural Organization. Gabriela, again, a great friend of this particular summit, and in her previous roles at the OECD, the Economic Club of Wealthier Nations, she's worked on major global conferences, including the G7 and the G20. Dennis Snower, of the unfortunately weak voice but the strong message, is with us once again this morning, the president of the Global Solutions Initiative. There's a whole range of academic citations here that I could mention. If you want to see the impact of Dennis Snower's thinking on global economic policy, then look around you, because this summit and the events that preceded it are all his monuments. So thank you, Dennis, for creating that vehicle and that opportunity to bring together great minds and global perspectives, including Isabella Teixeira. And we're delighted you're with us. You are co-chair of the International Resource Panel, the UN Environment Programme. From 2010 to 2016, you were Brazil's Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. You headed Brazil's delegations at a whole range of global discussions. You've advised the UN Secretary General, and you are, in your own right, an accomplished scholar. So welcome to all of you. We heard that stark warning at the start from Johan Rockström of the Potsdam Institute that time is running out to address climate change. Progress is too slow. We need solutions in time that bring equity and fairness, and the consequences will multiply if we dither. Though he did say that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that solutions are available for us. Gabriela Ramos, we know the urgency. What's taking so long?
Well, we've heard it from, well, first and foremost, so nice to be back to the Global Solutions Summit, as you said, and all hand on that. We've heard it from Joan and from Dennis. The issue is much more complex than just go to straightforward climate or economic or social policies. What we need to do doesn't happen in the vacuum. It happens in societies that are highly polarized, that are not prone to take decisions, that might not be ready to chip in into what is required in terms of the climate efforts, and they will not do it because of what we have seen over and over again, increase inequalities of income, opportunities, outcomes, and then this translating into inequalities in the policy sphere. So I feel that we should reconnect not only the recoupling of economic and social, understanding that is about our societies that need to be supported in the transitioning to a climate sphere. I love the fact that we are now talking about equity, but I don't think that this is happening in the global debate as it should. Equity, why? Because climate shocks affect more the lower income groups. But we are not taking that into consideration. And the growth path that we have followed continues to just take decisions in the financial economic sphere, and then we try to chip in some social issues, some environmental issues, and therefore what needs to be done to get very, very practical, because I think that Dennis and Joan exposed more strategic considerations.
So this isn't saying that the solutions are wrong, it is that the solutions don't take adequate account of the fact that at the moment the pain of transition is not spread on an equitable basis. It's not seen as fair.
And that's the main issue. We are asking our societies to take decisions that are really hard without considering the distributional impact of those decisions. And this is super important. How do you do that? Again, bringing together the economic, environmental, and social impact of the climate policies. And we have done that in the Managing of Social Transformation program that the social and human science sector of UNESCO has. I know that everybody knows the culture and education, but we are also a scientific institution. And this program has said, economic policy is always looking at efficiency outcomes, you said it. It's always looking at productivity growth, and then we add up the social and environmental. I think we need to bring those things together in a way that it's ex ante. What's going to be the environmental impact? What's going to be the social impact? But then we need to think, how do we accompany people? Because it's the same with the digital transition, the environmental impact. How do we support those that are going to bear the brunt, the gilets jaunes, the people that are not prepared or that are going to be experiencing the highest shock? And I would say we need to get into institutional innovation. Why don't we think about reforming our social protection systems to introduce some transfers to those groups that are going to be suffering the highest impact?
Okay,
and
that is one solution thought. We will hold that because I want to come back to it later.
But
I
let
want
me
to bring
just finish with one thing.
Briefly.
What do we do with the top income earners and those that are producing the highest impact on climate? Well, they should be paying more.
We ask them to pay more.
We need to pay more, yes.
How do we bring the social aspect into this? Now, how do we make these solutions that recognize that at the moment the distribution of the pain is not seen as fair?
Okay, what would you like to pay for this?
Somebody has to pay.
Right, are you sure about this? Because not what's happening today. Okay, this is true. What is happening today is that, first of all, we need to check which countries around the world are solutions providers in the next 5 years. We need to stop to postpone things. We need to stop to play based on the green wishing. Come to the reality and make clear what's happening today around the world. We have 2 wars happening, and we have emissions there. I was in Ukraine. I saw what's happening there. So my feeling or my understanding is that we need to make sure, if we're going at science as a political play, is saying that to have the planetary boundaries, that have no more natural resource available to deal with 10 billion people around the world, we need to understand that the crisis is not only the global ones, it's a global and planetary dimension that is emerging in the world, and we still play based on the last century, even when we go to geopolitical issues. So we have a fragmented world, international order that's collapsed, it's true, and we're looking forward to readdress, recoupling, based on inequity, without considering what's happening around the world, based exactly on inequality and equity. It's true what's happening. So when we go into the developing and emerging economies, We need to understand which countries, for example, are solution providers. Good players, solution providers. For example, my country is a good example for food security, for example, or even for renewable energy.
Just,
But
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're getting a little rattle from your microphone. I'm going to ask if we
terrible.
can...
This is not for women, okay?
I know, and
Okay, thank
we
you,
had the
sorry.
performance in trying
Okay,
to get it fitted earlier.
sorry,
We will bring another one on the stage,
okay.
but do carry on.
So I think that it's very important to understand when you go to discuss things based on solutions, it's absolutely critical that we learn that we need to phasing down and phasing out a world that we are absolutely accommodated on this. It's absolutely true.
Is it as simple as saying the rich must pay more?
It's not only the rich must pay. In the future, the other ones must pay. We need to pay the transformation. It's not only financial resource. You need to change our mindset. But what it means is a phasing out or phasing down. We have incentives here. You need to phasing up solutions. Nobody's paying for this in the speed that we need. So my feelings are that people don't understand that we have this momentum in this century. It is a convergence of age. You have climate age, you have digital technological age. It's so transformative. Go to the new generations, and also the bio age is emerging. So we have a new dimension of politics. This is nature politics that's coming. Which countries indeed have the domain or have the assets on nature? When you go to, for example, climate risks and go into mining risk, we were discussing this center, food security, climate security, energy security, mining security. It's only security and risk. So to convince people to change, you need to provide solution, not based on treasured narrative. We need to come based on something that you need to work hard to understand what transition means. Pay for the risks. You do need to pay for the risk. Without this, we have additional costs for the developing world, and this means that society probably will try to block this. And my last point, we cannot forget that it's also happening, mainly in the Western world, against democracy. And we need to understand the power of the populism and of the climate negationists, or the environment negationists against the solutions. And this is a reality.
And I knew you were going to talk about that at another session at this summit a little bit later today. But that echoes your point about the need to invest in institutions that can foster global resilience and global security.
It's very interesting, but what I have found also is that first and foremost, look at policies. As I said, integrate equity, sustainability, and economic growth in one single element. But then you also need to have more capable governments. And it's not only about the global south. I'm working now with 9 European countries to look at how do we invest in their analytical capacities to integrate these issues. The kind of data that you need, the kind of granularity in the information that you need, the kind of the wiring from the GDP metrics to understand really what is at stake. So I feel that it's also about investing in government capacities. And I'm not going to get into the question of orthodox economists that would say governments should only intervene when there are market failures, because market failures became so big that it's no longer a good narrative. But it's really getting serious about the capacities that you need to understand how do you accompany this transition, and what is the role of governments in terms of providing with this more sophisticated way of producing better policies, and then the implementation of those policies considering what Isabel has mentioned, which is this completely polarized societies that perceive very unfair outcomes, and that then go and vote for radical options. That is the vicious cycle, because those radical options and those populist movements are climate deniers. So I feel we really need to reframe it, and the governments are at the center, and their effectiveness needs to be invested in.
Okay, thank you. We have a business perspective that I want to bring in just a moment as well. But Dennis Snowyer, just using the microphone that's in front of you, if you don't mind. These contributions, the need for a greater emphasis on an equitable spread of the social pain, solutions that are truly global, looking to all parts of the world for potential solutions. Does that move us forward?
I think it's getting into the right mental space. But by itself, it won't move us forward for one simple reason. when we talk about systemic change and everyone on Earth needing to cooperate, it seems like an overwhelmingly difficult job. And therefore, the natural response to overwhelmingly difficult jobs is to give up. What we should do instead is to understand the very specific instruments, policies, processes we need in order to effect change. Now, Johan said that it's very inspiring that you have these rays of hope from people in the vanguard doing things that may take us to a tipping point. But they might not. There is no guarantee that rays of hope will add up to a lot of sunshine. Therefore, the time has come for us to get down to work and be serious. One thing that we know does not work are voluntary contributions to climate, voluntary this and that.
Two nods of agreement on that comment, by the way.
And what we have always done in any ordered society is that we have a set of norms and values that drive us in a certain direction, and they are reinforced by laws that set boundaries. And unless these boundaries are set, then little progress can be made. If there were no laws against theft, it would be difficult to have a market economy.
Okay, thank you. Take that into the boardroom. First of all, is there frustration that progress is so slow? There are lots of companies out there that say, we are green, we are sustainable. Some of them are even telling the truth when they do it.
So let me be clear. The market is failing. The market is failing. When you listen to Johan describe the consequences of our collective economic activities delivering the outcomes that he has described, by definition, you have to conclude that the market is failing, which means that you have to redefine what purpose the market is designed to serve, and then more particularly, to echo Dennis's sentiment, how to do that. And yeah, you can probably sense the frustration on my part, Declan, because it's not the first time that we've had this kind of conversation around this table over the last 7 years. And so I think that there is a mix of frustration, but I also suppose there's a real anxiety about the pace and scale issue. And if people are to take one phrase away from today, it is the phrase that Johan shared with us earlier. This is about pace and scale. Because we know how to influence market activities and economic actors, including the largest businesses on the planet. And we have examples of situations where we do that and the behaviors change. And we know that that happens in different ways for different reasons. So in the US, we see a set of incentives, tax incentives, which are driving really meaningful change. That's a reflection of the US political dynamic and its capacity to introduce incentives rather than raise taxes. We have the opposite dynamic here in Europe, where we have carbon taxes coming through, because it's a reflection of the European capacity to do that.
Dennis's point was that the days of voluntary commitments are gone.
Until we shift all business activities away from we're doing our best to you have no choice, Mr. and Mrs. Business, but to behave in a manner which delivers on the commitments, the agreements which, for example, we as a country or as a collection of countries have made in relation to the Paris Agreement. So we're very clear, we do not have that today. We have elements of it in patches around the world, and as a result, the rest of the economic activity, which is not touched by those redefined boundaries, continues with business as usual. Business as usual is a failed market economy in the context of the sustainability of our planet and the well-being of our people. And to echo the point that Gabrielle has described, you cannot distinguish between a just transition or the fairness of these issues and the outcomes from an economic perspective. By definition, they are the same thing. And if you try, you fail. If you try and introduce economic incentives or disincentives, particularly at consumer level, and you don't take those terrible impositions into account in civil society, you get the backlash, you get the populism, and they fail. So they have to be planned in a manner that brings a just transition. But I really want to emphasize this point speaking as a business person. We have to shift away from a situation where businesses can do their best, but actually it's not the overarching priority compared to their direct responsibilities. And we have to shift that into this is not a voluntary exercise. The framework has to be redefined, the boundaries have to be redrawn, and we have to get on with delivering outcomes which actually are sustainable, both for people and for planet.
So the vehicles for delivery are what? Incentives? Dennis thinks the time for that has gone, that we're now looking at regulation. Now, there's a role for it, but there needs to be a greater element of compulsion. Have I understood that correctly?
Let me answer that if you don't mind, if you haven't done this, because I actually think there's a number of, I want to be clear about this voluntary, non-voluntary, right? An incentive changes activity for a business from the voluntary to the non-voluntary. So in some respects, it doesn't matter. It could be incentives. That's what we see working in the US. It could be carbon taxes and imposition. That's what we see in Europe. China has a very interesting mix of incentives, fiscal and impositions and regulation. And guess who's moving really quickly against some of these issues, right, as a consequence. So I think that the political capacity will vary, but I think that it doesn't matter provided we drive the behaviors which deliver the outcomes that we have to get to. But it has to shift away from it not being a priority today.
Okay, Dennis.
I think we've got to be clear that we've got a number of instruments at our disposal. As you've said, we've got taxes and subsidies, things that affect incentives. We've got regulations and laws that affect constraints in which business and consumers can behave. And our job here in the Global Solutions Summit, as well as in other international organizations, is to think about what mix of policies do we need in order to make people in their pursuit in business pursuits, in their pursuit through life as consumers and so on, preserve the environment and uphold society. And I think that will require a number of important enablers. Measurement. We need to measure social prosperity with the same regularity and consistency as we measure shareholder value and GDP. We need to measure environmental prosperity with the same consistency. The SAGE dashboard has been measured for 160 countries over 20 years. And these type of efforts provide a foundation. And then we need reporting on that basis. And that reporting needs to translate into something because there are laws that ensure that you need to act in accordance with your reports. You also need to make sure that international relations are inclusive and fair and that people feel that they have a say in policies that affect them. And putting all of that together, rewards and penalties, a process that's coherent and clear and fair and inclusive, as well as measurement and reporting, may provide a good framework for getting on with things. But I think what we need to do at this conference is not to express, show that our heart is in the right place, but actually to get down to work and come up with specific solutions which will differ from country to country, so that different countries can follow their distinctive pathways towards a common goal.
Now that's interesting, because we talk about global solutions in this room. You are saying that actually it's an agglomeration of national solutions.
Of course, the national solutions have to add up to what we need globally in order to stop destabilizing our planet. But different countries have different circumstances, social, political, environmental, and therefore they will need to follow different pathways. But these pathways need to be mandatory pathways, and they need to add up. So what we need to do as a community of nations is listen to what nations have to say about their distinctive pathways, but then negotiate across nations to make sure that it adds up.
Okay,
and I could not agree more, because it's national, of course. The efforts need to be contextualized and understand where you are and where you want to go, because there's no one size fits all. But if we continue defining progress as maximizing growth, as we do with GDP, and as Colm said, without changing the financial requirements, the shareholder value, because we speak a lot, but when you go to the stock exchange, there's just one single metric. Great job of Emmanuel Faber, but at the end, we really need to change the metrics, because the metrics are defining the way we define progress. And I feel this is very important. So
Okay,
at the
so
macro
how
level,
is that to be done?
you need to, I don't know if you can dewire, as we need to dewire from fossil fuels, we need to dewire from GDP metrics. Just as plain as that, because it's just measuring production and consumption and maximizing growth. But that's difficult because it has many complications. But I agree with Dennis. We need to get into tools and metrics that will complement and that will tell us how much the path that GDP might bring you to will be changed if you introduce the equity and sustainability. But then the other part, which is so important, and this is something that we are going to be doing in the social and human science sector at UNESCO, need to understand the distributional impact of policies. Because in that way, you will make them palatable, and you will be able to accompany people in this transition. It's a massive transition.
Do we have the time to change fundamental thinking in that way? I don't disagree with your argument that this is what we have to do. My point is we haven't got the time anymore.
We need to do it. I don't understand your question, my dear, because we need just do it.
The time for philosophical
discussion is gone. It's not a philosophical discussion. It's a call to finance ministers to complement the economic toolkit they have that is just comparing themselves in terms of GDP growth.
Okay, so that's the mechanism.
We continue to do that every quarterly to see if you grew or not, if you recover or not from COVID, but it's just a metrics of how much you produce.
We said after the credit crunch, we must get away from shareholder value, and we're 15 years on, and we're still talking about shareholder value.
Yeah, but I still agree with Gabriella, right? So I think that the difference is that when policy is being formulated, instead of its primary, if not exclusive focus being on GDP, we have to ensure that the outcomes from a policy perspective are intended to deliver good outcomes for people, planet, and society. But that means that you have to bend the market economies to your will, right? That means that you have to use the financial aspects of a market economy, which are very powerful. You have to use them, redefine the boundaries in a manner which is consistent with the broader outcome.
And again, my impossible question is, how is that to be done?
Oh, I think we have examples of it being done today, but just not happening at the pace and the scale. One final comment, which I think is really critical to touch on what something Isabel said earlier. One consequence of redefining those boundaries and setting quite specific, redrawed expectations of business is that you stimulate finance to be directed into the right places at massive pace and scale. That's not happening today because you stimulate massive demand for the transformation. We have to be more thoughtful and quicker at doing that.
Got to stop you there because you've only got a minute.
Yes, the game is over.
Yeah. Time is literally running out.
Two things are important. First of all, if you're discussing solutions, we need to move from this place that's the green-wishing place. It's not greenwashing, it's green-wishing. Be pragmatic, okay?
Nice thought.
Ground now, we understand our challenges. New metrics, governance, markets. We have been discussing this since the last 10 years, or the last 30 years. Be pragmatic. What's available? How we can manage it? Second point, when you go into solutions, please discuss the impacts of the solutions, environment and social ones. Because when you go, for example, artificial intelligence, the demands for energy is 10 times more when you go into Google research. If you go to green hydrogen, check the demand for water. So sometimes my feeling is that we are discussing without considering what should be learned in the past. So be pragmatic, have a pact around the world to discuss the next 5 years, if you understand how we go to by 2030. If not, again, we're coming, postponed by 2035, 2050, and pray for God. And I hope that God could become a low-carbon God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are further discussions on this and all the other pressing topics on our agenda over the next 2 days, and you'll hear from our speakers then as well. And we want to hear your voice, and we want you to participate in those discussions as well. But for now, please join me in thanking our panelists, Colin Kelly, Gabriela Ramos, Dennis Snower, and Isabella Teixeira. Give them all a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Declan.
Thanks to all of you, and actually it might be even sad if an opening panel had it all done and discussed by the end. We know that it was way too short to dive into everything, but that's what an opening is for. Get a lot of balls up into the air. So up next, we'll send you all on your ways to choose from usually 3 parallel sessions to attend. And to help you make a smart decision on that one, I'm going to have you spend a few minutes with 2 colleagues of mine, whom I'm going to welcome to the stage, and that's our research director, Tabea Lissner, and our senior program manager, Yamuna Rao. Please join me here. We're going to have to cramp up a little bit. Hello.
Hello.
So I'm going to start with you, Yamuna. So if I want to take a smart decision on which of the parallel sessions to attend, what's your tip on that? Can you put up some signposts?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for having come to Berlin for the Global Solutions Summit. And a question was, which session should you choose from? Well, I think it's a tough choice because we have over 50 sessions happening across 2 days. And the best part is they're all going to be very different. We have 3 program tracks to choose from. If you decide to remain in this room, then the sessions will remain at a high-level discussion, much like what you saw earlier. If you choose to move to the room next door in Auditorium 2, they're called the Solutions Deep Dives. And in the deep dives, you're doing more of, well, as the name suggests, diving deeper into a very complex policy issue. And if you should want to go into more of like, what are the different stakeholders talking about, and looking at it more from an interactive, explorative perspective, then go to the last room along this corridor. It's the Solutions Dialogues. And these 3 tracks have been prepared very meticulously by my absolutely excellent and exceptional team, the program team. We want to give them a shout out. And this is a wonderful program, and I hope everyone gets a chance to enjoy it.
And we're going to meet all of your team members on those sessions, right? So that usually they open them themselves. Dear live stream, the dialogues are the 1 tracks where you can follow. That's a quite small room that might also be important to you. There's 60 to 70 spots in each of these, in the dialogues and deep dive sessions. The deep dives are also live streamed, so you can use your app to just follow the stream, or we will also, no, for this we won't offer streams. From here, we usually offer a stream to the foyers also. The dialogues are workshop-style sessions to which we don't have a hybrid equipment, but you're most welcome, dear streamies, to the deep dives, and also to stick with us here in this solution forum. So, but if I cannot go to one of these, or also if I want help in maybe having or I don't know, if I want help in grasping the contents, what can I do, Tabea?
So there's 3 points I would want to highlight for our program to tackle the many parallel sessions. First of all, we've of course heard in the opening speeches in the panel just now the sense of urgency and really the need for solutions at scale that really tackle the manifold problems. So all of our sessions really want to have a renewed focus on discussion of solution processes. And we formulated 3 key guiding questions that we would really like for you to keep in the back of your heads for all of these sessions, and where we really hope that a red thread kind of emerges out of all of the discussions. So what we would really like to focus on is, first of all, who needs to be at the table for effective solutions to be formulated? We'd also like to understand what would be enabling conditions that can really support implementing such solutions at scale. And then, of course, there's awareness that there might be barriers also, and we'd really like to focus on understanding what these barriers are, but also how we might be overcoming those. As a second point, we do have a number of different crises that we're actually trying to find solutions for. So we've structured the program into 8 different programmatic, thematic areas, and we've worked hard to make sure
that all of these sessions that speak to one specific topics are scheduled in a way that you're actually able to follow those at different times. But of course, we're aware that it might still be very difficult to actually follow all of these different topical streams. So we're super excited to also have several experts in the room who will be supporting us in actually documenting the key outcomes of these topical areas of sessions alongside the guiding questions, and will support us after the summit in actually documenting a lot of the results into a report that will then allow you to also access some of the high-level messaging out of the parallel sessions. As a third key point, I'm also very excited to introduce Robin Hotz, who's sitting in the corner there, who's our graphic reporter or recorder, and will be sitting in this room and putting together his key thoughts, the key elements that he takes away from these sessions. There will be touch points along the way where Claudia will actually get him up on the stage to share some of the key results, but we will also, once these results become available, have these outside on walls and in the foyer on screens. And as a very final point, we're very honored to also have a lot of the leadership of the T20 and T7 processes here, and a lot of the task force leads. So all of the discussions that we actually have here in this room and in the other rooms as well will be hopefully feeding directly into finalizing the policy recommendations that will then inform the G20 presidency.
Well, thanks a lot to both of you and to the entire team. We're going to see you back here and also in all of the rooms. I'm going to let you go and take a good decision for which session to go to next. And to all of you, please be sure that you use our conference app Talk wisely. This is the only program we have. Obviously, talking about sustainability, we did not print paper programs and participants overviews, but I hope you can find everything in there. Please turn to my colleagues in green if you can make your way on the app somehow. And let us help you, or just use our mobile. Then you will always have the stream, we said that, and then also we know that we cut the break times quite short, but we don't want you to starve or not have a break. We'll provide coffee and snacks all day long in both foyers, not only up here in foyer 2, but also on foyer 1, so whenever you choose your break times and your little round tables, whenever you need them. So go, find yourself a next round table, and we're going to see you again later. Thank you so much.